The phone rang at 6:30 in the morning, and my sister's voice came through cold and flat. Dad died last night. And just so you know, you get nothing. Not $1. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there in my kitchen, coffee going cold in my hands, listening to my own sister deliver the worst news of my life like she was reading a grocery list. And then, before I could even process it, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around. My father was standing in my kitchen doorway, very much alive, holding a cup of tea I had made him 20 minutes earlier. My name is Rachel. And this is the story of how my family tried to erase me from my father's life while he was still breathing, and how I found out that sometimes the people who claim to love someone the most are the ones lying to their face. I need to take you back further, because none of this makes sense unless you understand where it started. I was the middle child in a family that valued achievement over affection. My older brother became a surgeon. My younger sister, Melissa, became a corporate lawyer. And me, I became a nurse. Not a doctor, not a partner at a firm, a nurse. To my mother, that was practically an insult. You had the grades for medical school, she used to say. Like nursing was something you settled for when you failed at life. My father was different, quieter. He never said much at family dinners. But I noticed things, the way his eyes would follow me when I talked about my patients. The way he'd ask real questions instead of comparing me to my siblings. I thought, for a long time, that he was just tired, passive, a man who let his wife run the household and didn't fight for anyone, including himself. Then 2 years ago, my mother passed away suddenly from a heart attack, and something in my father changed. He got quieter, distant. My brother and sister assumed grief. I assumed something else, something I couldn't name yet. About 8 months ago, my father was diagnosed with early-stage vascular dementia. My brother, the surgeon, decided he was too busy to manage Dad's care. My sister, the lawyer, said she'd handle the legal side, which really meant she wanted control of his estate. And me, I was the only one who showed up. Every single day after my hospital shifts, I drove 40 minutes to his house. I made his meals. I sat with him during his confused moments, when he'd ask where my mother was, and I'd have to tell him gently, again and again, that she was gone. I held his hand through doctor's appointments my siblings never attended. I became, without ever asking for the title, his full-time caregiver. And through all of it, I never once heard a thank you from Melissa. Instead, what I heard were comments. You're just doing this so he puts you in the will. You always did want attention. Must be nice having so much free time. I let it go. Every time. Because I wasn't doing it for money. I was doing it because he was my father. And because somewhere in those quiet months of caring for him, something beautiful happened. We actually became close. For the first time in my life, I felt like he saw me. Really saw me. One evening, about 3 months ago, he grabbed my hand during one of his clearer moments and said something I'll never forget. Rachel, you're the only one who actually stayed. I thought that was the beginning of healing. I didn't know it was the beginning of a war, because apparently, my siblings had noticed too. They noticed how close Dad and I had become. And instead of being happy that our father had someone who genuinely cared for him, they got scared. Scared of what it meant for the inheritance. Scared that the unsuccessful nurse might end up being the one he trusted most. So they started a plan. And I only found out how deep it went on the morning of that phone call. Let me back up just slightly to explain how my father ended up standing in my kitchen holding a cup of tea while my sister told me he was dead. 2 days earlier, Dad had a bad fall at his house. Nothing life-threatening, but it scared him, and it scared me. I made the decision, as his primary caregiver, to bring him to my apartment for a few days so I could monitor him properly. I called my siblings to let them know. My brother said, okay, keep me posted, and never called again. My sister didn't respond at all. That night, my father slept in my guest room. The next morning, the morning of that phone call, he woke up early, made his way to my kitchen, and was standing right behind me sipping tea when my sister called to tell me he had died. For a moment, I genuinely thought I was losing my mind. I turned the phone toward him, my hand shaking. Melissa, I said, Dad is standing right here. He's alive. There was silence on the other end. A long, guilty silence. And then she hung up. I sat my father down, and even in his confused state, He understood enough to know something was very wrong. I called my brother immediately. He didn't answer. I called back for 20 minutes until finally he picked up, sounding panicked. "Rachel, it's not what you think. My sister just told me our father died," I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "He's sitting right here drinking tea. Explain to me what I'm supposed to think." The truth came out in pieces over the next few days. And it was worse than anything I could have imagined. My siblings had been planning to have my father declared incompetent and move him into Melissa's legal guardianship, not for his benefit, but so they could gain control over his assets, including the house and his retirement accounts. Before he had the chance to update his will in my favor, they had actually consulted a lawyer, a colleague of Melissa's, about accelerating the guardianship process. But there was a problem. My father, even in his diagnosed state, had lucid days, good days where his mind was sharp and clear. And apparently, 2 weeks before that phone call, on one of those good days, he had gone with a lawyer of his own, someone he'd called quietly, without telling anyone, and updated his will. Melissa found out. And instead of accepting that our father had made his own choice, she panicked. She assumed that if she could convince me he died before I found out about the will change, she could rush in, claim I had abandoned my share, and manipulate the paperwork before I even understood what was happening. It was reckless and desperate, and it says everything about how far grief and greed can twist a person when money enters the picture. She hadn't planned for one simple truth. My father wasn't actually dead. He was very much alive, and he was very much aware, in that moment, of exactly what his daughter had done. I'll never forget his face when he understood. He set his tea down slowly, his hands trembling, not from the dementia this time, but from something deeper. "Betrayal. She told you I was dead," he said quietly. So she could take everything before I had a say. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. His silence said more than any words could. A week later, my father asked me to drive him to Melissa's house. I tried to talk him out of it, worried it would be distressful, but he insisted. When she opened the door and saw him standing there, alive, calm, and clear-eyed, her face went pale. "Dad, I can explain." "You don't need to explain," he said. I heard the recording. I hadn't even known he'd asked me to keep recording our calls with the siblings for his own peace of mind during his confused days. But he had. And that recording, of Melissa discussing accelerating his guardianship before things get complicated, was more than enough. He didn't yell. He didn't cry. He simply said, "I've already made my decisions." And they were made with a clear mind, on a clear day, with a lawyer who has no relationship to either of you. Rachel didn't ask me for anything. She just showed up. I want to be honest with you. There was a part of me that expected to feel triumphant in that moment, vindicated. Instead, I just felt sad. Sad that it had come to this. Sad that love, in my family, had always come with a price tag attached. My father passed away peacefully for months later, this time for real, with me holding his hand. Before he went, he told me something I carry with me every single day. The people who truly love you don't need proof. They just show up, again and again, without being asked. I didn't inherit a fortune that made headlines. I inherited a house, some savings, and more importantly, the certainty that I had spent my father's final months earning something no amount of money could buy: his trust, his peace, and his truth. If there's one thing this experience taught me, it's that showing up quietly, with no expectation of reward, will always outlast the loudest performances of love. Real character reveals itself not in the good times, but in the moments no one is watching. The tea you make at 6 in the morning, the hand you hold through confusion, the patience you offer when no one is keeping score. To anyone out there who feels invisible in your own family, who feels like the quiet one, the less impressive one, please hear me. Your worth was never meant to be measured by anyone else's approval. Keep showing up. Keep being kind. The truth always finds its way to the light, even when it takes years. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real, emotional stories about family, betrayal, and the quiet strength it takes to heal and rise above it all.